So, hello, welcome everybody. Witamy na Europejskim Parlamencie. And the last word in Polish, wieskim. So welcome to the European Parliament 2022. Welcome rural people, NGOs, public sector, private sector, all delegates. We are here to talk about rural areas, your concerns, your messages to governments, to EU, to all the decision makers. And this is your day. We will be working a lot. I hope we will manage with all these activities that we have today. Because we are late, I will not be talking too much of the program. Sorry, but you have the program yourselves, and we will start with the presentation of the delegations present here in this gathering 2022, and we are many of them. We have many from youth participants, and we have many people from villages. So please, Pavel, the presentations of the delegations. Okay.
All right, with not everybody here, we're going to have to see if this works. But what we tend to do at the beginning of every meeting of the Parliament is simply to ask all the delegations to stand up and show themselves so that you become visible, so that we know that when it's true that when we say we have people from Ukraine or Albania or North Macedonia, that it's actually the case. Aware that there are a few coaches still on the way. This may not work out as planned. Never mind. Maybe someone will just feel that they are a Croat and stand up instead. We'll see how it goes. So we're going to take it alphabetically. So people who know they're going to be at the end can relax or get stressed over time. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, we warmly welcome the group that has come from Albania. If we could ask you to stand up and hello. When we started 2 days ago, there was much mention made of the fact that we have a delegation from Ukraine, and we were fully aware that there is an armed conflict taking place there. Since then, unfortunately, another armed conflict has started, and that is in Armenia. But we have a delegation from Armenia. I hope you're here so that we can welcome you. No, not yet. We'll repeat that. Austria. If there's a group from Austria, there were just a few people. Hello, wonderful. Very glad to see you. Now, there were people who registered as Belgians. I don't really think they're Belgians. I think they have their headquarters in Brussels. But if you registered as Belgian, then please stand up and show yourselves. I don't know, there's Aris, who's really Latvian. Ah, there is Alexia from the Commission. Excellent, welcome. Bosnia and Herzegovina. I hope that someone's there. Yes. Welcome, very glad to have you here. Bulgaria. Yes, hello. Croatia. Now this is a risky one because I think it's just two people, but no, we'll repeat that one as well. The Czech Republic. Hooray. Welcome. From Estonia. From Finland. A delegation from France. No, they're still on their way. We have two delegates from Georgia. The group from Germany. Hello. Levin. Levin, you're from Germany, you didn't stand up. From Greece. Not here either. From Hungary. Hello. From Iceland, a long way away, thank you for coming. From Ireland? Now there's an assertive delegation, I like that. From Italy? Good morning. From Kosovo? From Latvia? Yay! From Lithuania? Welcome, I'm glad you could make it. From Moldova? And if I could just ask Aurelia Bondari if you're here to come to the front of the room. Montenegro. The Netherlands. Hello. From North Macedonia. Hello. From Portugal. Yay! From Romania. From Serbia. From Slovakia. From Slovenia. Oh. From Spain. Yay! I welcome the delegates from Sweden. There's a group from Turkey, which we welcome warmly. Now there is already, we had them stand up 2 days ago, a group from Ukraine. So there you are. And I expect all the countries that I mentioned before to be grateful for the fact that having known they would be singing, I didn't have them go first, because then that would have been an act to follow. Thank you very, very much. Now on the list I have a place that's mentioned as the United Kingdom. I know that doesn't really fit with everybody, so I'm going to break that up. I don't think there's anyone here from either England or Northern Ireland, but if you wish to prove me wrong, give me a shout. Hooray! Then that would mean you're from England. Welcome. I'm very glad you're here. There is a group from Scotland. And there are delegates from Wales. Boreda to you. And finally, the host nation, Poland. Welcome, everybody, and I will ask our panelists for the first session to please join us on stage.
Petar. So I welcome you to start the inspirational part of the European Rural Parliament gathering in Kielce 2022. We have 5 great speakers here present on the stage, and we will immediately start with our keynote speaker, Ms. Karen Kivney, Assistant Professor of Rural Development at University of College of Dublin. Please, Karen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to be here and an honour to have been invited to speak with you this morning. This is my first experience of the European Rural Parliament, and already I have found inspiration and joy in meeting so many of you. I am very proud to represent my country of Ireland today, and I see our delegation here. I'm also very proud to be from the west of Ireland, which has a very particular geography. If anyone is familiar with it, I grew up between Galway and Roscommon. I grew up at a time when emigration was the norm and opportunities for young people in rural areas were limited. And I, like so many of my contemporaries, had to leave. I think it is especially important that the youth are represented so well at this ERP, because as much as it is a cliche, you are the future. I am privileged to have been able to return to live and work in a rural place and bring that to my research and my teaching, where I am so fortunate to work with young people who come from Ireland and many other countries. For many of us today and over this week, to actually be together is an achievement. To be in a space where we can share our experiences, engage in conversation, and learn from each other, and laugh together in person is an enormous achievement and a big move forward from where we were even this time last year. And while there is so much to be grateful for and positive about, we also cannot ignore the challenges of the world we live in today. The reason why we haven't been able to meet for so long was because, of course, of the global pandemic. This year, the war against Ukraine has highlighted the fragility of peace, something we are all too familiar with in Ireland. It has highlighted how regional and local incidents impact on the movement of people, people who deserve to live in peace in a place of their own choosing. It has emphasised our reliance on global food and energy markets. It highlights the utmost importance of democracy and of giving voice to those who are not heard by providing paths to social and spatial justice. What we have learned, particularly over the last few years, is that while the world may be experiencing similar phenomena, it affects us all unequally. Rural areas were impacted by isolation during lockdowns and curfews. Older people's vulnerabilities were brought to the fore. We became acutely aware of distance and access to health and other services. But existing networks of cooperation rose up and filled the gap by addressing immediate needs. We saw this at the height of the COVID pandemic. We see it in response to provide supports for Ukrainian refugees in many of our countries. In many ways, the challenges we face have shone a light on what rural places offer to our localities and beyond. What I want to speak about this morning is not just what rural places, the places we live and work in, have to offer. But I also want to reflect on the principles and practices we engage in on a daily basis in rural development. Of course, none of this can be discussed without mentioning the greatest challenge of our times, which is the climate crisis. Despite pleas and evidence from climate scientists and experts, there is a lack of preparedness for what is needed to respond to climate change. But there is opportunity for rural places and people. Opportunity lies in the shift towards a localised approach to climate change. It is in this space that rural communities can thrive by factoring in the social, cultural and ecological into the economy. Community-led local development, of which so many of you in the room are experts, has the opportunity to address this lack of preparedness for climate action. The principles, practices and methodology of LEADER that have been with us for over 30 years now have so much to offer. This is why European rural policies must move beyond Pillar 2 of the Common Agricultural Policy and recognise not only the diversity of rural places, but how that diversity can inform broader territorial responses to ecological, social and economic challenges. That diversity already plays roles in our green, just energy and economic transitions, as well as the physical renewable sources that rural territories offer, and the local, bottom-up, place-based approach that can contribute to future needs for sustainability. Over 20 years ago, Colin Hines wrote his book, Localisation, a Global Manifesto. So much of his thinking still influences policies such as the European Green Deal. It is a manifesto worth revisiting as a clarion call to localise money flows to rebuild economies of communities and to foster democratic involvement in both local economic and political systems. It is worth remembering that the principles of LEADER are based on these common goals to ensure sustainable rural development. And these principles we are so familiar with. They are place-based and bottom-up, built around local partnerships, networking and cooperation. They are integrated and multi-sectoral and innovative. However, while the LEADER model and methodology works so well and has a great legacy now in place, there are things to be concerned about. There is great capacity in the workers, community leaders and volunteers, but many are burnt out from application writing and grant chasing, leaving little to no time for reflection or animation. Autonomy varies across and within the member states. We know that the most effective rural development happens when there is meaningful consultation with managing authorities. This is inconsistent throughout the European Union, to put it mildly. There needs to be an alignment of expectations around rural development, community development and local development in order to have clear goals for the future. Simplification is necessary to allow rural development to respond to the climate crisis by integrating social, cultural and ecological factors into local and national economies. But despite all of this, central to any reflection on the future of rural Europe is that we have a common future together, informed by our diversity and potential for adaptation and mitigation. As we welcome the new LEADER programme, we know that regardless of member state interpretation, that LAGs and community-led local development must show the way to innovative responses to the social, economic and ecological challenges ahead. Innovative is smart, and smart is not all about cutting-edge technology, but about using our resources well and harnessing them for the benefit of all communities. Understanding what we are good at, learning how to build capacity, and sharing through our network and through engagement with each other. As the local leaders on our field visit yesterday, which was focused on smart villages, stated, Smart is where people are organised, where people are active, where they can self-govern, where a society responds to challenge in an innovative way. Innovative and smart is seeing the obstacle and using it to your advantage, like the many things that we saw on all of our visits yesterday. Speaking of visits, I was on Tour 8. I don't know if many of you heard about Tour 8, but we met a few obstacles on our way. Let's just say we had an issue with narrow roads and a reversing bus and a soft field, as we might say in Ireland. And in attempting to solve the problem of the bus stuck in a rut, we harnessed all the principles of rural development and leader. We were challenged by a place-based problem to which we had to respond locally and with local resources. We had to work from the bottom up, quite literally at times, and there is photographic evidence. But we had to work from the bottom up to figure out the safest and most effective response. I'm saying we a lot, but I must admit I was one of the onlookers giving my opinion and taking photographs. We partnered together to solve the problem with effective leadership from Dominica, I don't know if she's here, the bus driver, the local village leader, and the local farmers, as well as the wonderful, resourceful ERP delegates. We networked and cooperated with each other by contacting the bus company, taking lots of pictures of various sized tractors that came to our rescue, and there were a few, and sharing those photos on social media with the lucky delegates who were already here enjoying the youth cafe or dinner. We integrated the experience into our learning for the day by taking time to reflect on what we had seen. And we innovated by observing and learning that if one tractor is too small, then get another one. And if that's too small, then get another one until you find one big enough to pull a bus out of a field. Overall and together, we shared the experience, and Tour 8 is now bonded for life through that shared experience. I certainly do not have all the answers here and now to the climate crisis and other challenges we face. But what I do know is that people and places are central to the much-needed emergency response. The people-centred approach adopted by many of our national governments in their rural development strategies and by the Commission's long-term vision calls for participative democracy and strong citizen engagement. There is no doubt that we face challenging times in Europe and across the world, in urban and rural places, from coastal areas to inland spaces. Inspiration to face these challenges comes when we think and reflect and animate, because it is not someone else who will solve the problems. It is not another group or institution or government. It is not any one programme or grant or fund who will provide the answers. It is you. It is us. It is us who face the challenges of today and tomorrow. It is your skill and know-how that is needed and needs to be applied so that true rural resilience can be achieved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Karen, to setting the scene. Now we understand that we might need one tractor or two or three to pull sometimes the villages, communities to the results. Sometimes we need these people pushing the coach or the bus, the decision makers, the politicians, the commission, the governments to make things happen. On the other hand, we are also very much self-committed in the villages and we do a lot of things ourselves without asking any questions. And now we are going to Moldova, the eastern part of Europe, and we are having an example of creating a rural development network in Moldova, Ms. Aurelia Bondari, the President of Rural Development Network of Moldova. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you for putting the presentation. It works. Dear participants, dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to be today here and have this opportunity to share with you our story. Maybe we are too naive because we are quite young in this family of rural parliament. But anyway, when you are doing things which bring results, when we are putting a lot of energy, dedication, the idea is coming. Yes, we did it. We managed to do something very special, something exceptional. But perhaps such exceptional stories in this room are plenty of them. Through the development process in the rural areas, probably you managed to do much more than we at this stage. However, let's tell our story. We are a rural network from Moldova, which was established in 2018, but at the initial stage it was more as a movement, and it has informal statute. Later on it was registered and now have more than 100 members. It is important to mention that our network is multi-sectorial and multi-partnerships. And we started with involving in the network a broad spectrum of actors, and especially to have this permanent platform for dialogue on the public policies on rural development with decision makers, because this is very important to have them together with you in these discussions. We as a civil society many times are discussing problems, promoting recommendations, see some solutions, but if this dialogue is not settled and it's not a permanent one, the results will not come. So in our network we have the central public administration, civil society, and private sector. Initially, the members were at equal level, but later when we was registered as non-profit organization, some of them as central public administration ministries, they became our partners. Therefore, we have large partnerships and we have all the sectors which are related to rural development in Moldova. How we start? We started with the 5 organizations which were working in agriculture and rural development, and now that the governments in Moldova are changing very often. Sometimes the Minister of Agriculture has 4 or 6 months, the longest period is 1.5 years. And we are just starting to do something, to establish dialogue, to promote some initiatives, and the government is changing. And we have to start from the scratch. And therefore, this platform was very important for us to have this continuity and to involve not only high-level officials as ministries, but also on all levels, state secretaries, chief of the departments, and so on. And we managed to do it. The next step was to organize a broad participatory process in order to develop the concept of the network. And that was plenty of activities starting from the community level, regional level, national level, workshops, roundtable discussion, focus groups, and so on. And also in parallel, we were doing capacity building programs for our potential members, and we were doing study research surveys. As an outcome, we identified a range of challenges. Some of them we knew it, but the studies confirmed again that in Moldova, the rural policies are almost not existing. The rural things are mostly presented as support to agriculture. And another thing is that the public policies are not the result of the public debates involving of the civil society actors. And another challenge is that the rural people traditionally are delegating the decision-making to public authorities and don't have this knowledge and abilities to be part of the policy decision making. Therefore, in our strategy was the intention to work on this, on all this level. First of all, to establish this dialogue, to ensure the flow of information from bottom up and down. Also to have a large capacity building program, to work on policy issues together with all actors, to ensure this participatory process, and many other stuff. Our methods was the organization of the thematic working groups, and in these thematic groups we were involving the members, but also relevant stakeholders. The issue of the thematic working groups, we were consulting from our members, especially from the local level. Afterwards, the board of the network is deciding and validating the topics of the year, and the thematic working groups are working on these subjects by developing a report which coming from expertise side and from the side of the members. I must say that the participation in this thematic working group was very broad, because we had this opportunity to talk with decision makers, and they were present in all the meetings, but also the people from local level also had the opportunity to talk with them and to promote their idea and to advocate for their interest. And therefore, these thematic groups are very popular. As an outcome of these thematic working groups, we are developing the position paper. Around the position paper, we are creating an advocacy group, which developed a plan, and afterwards it's working. I must say that some advocacy actions abroad by involving the media campaigns and other stuff, but some of them are quite technical, because even during the work of the thematic group, the ministry is taking over some of our ideas, because they also need these inputs. They also need to have this dialogue. Therefore, we managed in quite short time to promote about 15 modifications in regulatory framework and legislation. We even managed to promote a new law. We managed to promote new measures for subsidy for the rural measures in subsidy regulation, because previously we had only subsidy fund for agriculture. Now we have the subsidy fund for agriculture and rural development, where the rural measures to support also are present. We managed to increase the subsidy fund, because initially the fight started between the farmers' organization and network, because they were saying that we are taking money from them. And we told, no, we are not taking, we have to fight together to increase the fund, that's it. And that will be a win-win process. Also for rural tourism, managed to promote some initiatives and many other things. What are the key factors for our success? Probably you know them well, because it was mentioned by previous speakers, and we think that the relevance of this network, it was one of the key factors. Because at the time when we started, the leader program started in Moldova, and the rural citizens were waking up with the initiatives. The national strategy for agriculture and rural development went through the medium-term review, which was broadly consulted, and we as a network were involved in this, and many other strategies, which created as well coherence with national policies, local strategies developed by local action groups. And another, I must say, the critical and most important factor, this is partnership. We managed to develop the partnership on all levels. That was from local, regional, national, and international. Yeah, thank you. And international support is also very important for us, because we got many knowledge and inputs from our partners from Latvia and Romania, and we are grateful for this, because this is that push us to advance quite fast. And another factor, of course, this empowerment of rural citizens and involving them in this process. If to compare the initial stage and now how they're talking, how they're formulating their proposals. Initially they were talking only in the formulation of problems. Now they're coming with the solutions. And this is very important for us. What about the future? In the future, we are going to be a very active actor in this integration process and in this role of the candidate country of the EU, which we obtained this status now recently. We are going to organize a rural parliament in Moldova. We started already this year to prepare the concept, and next year we have the ambition to have it. We'll continue to develop capacity of our networks to strengthen this network institutionally, and to be efficient and to be useful for development of our rural areas. Now I have some pictures. I will try to go fast through it, just that you'll get a visual identity of our network. You must see here the thematic working groups, the consultation process of the strategy for rural development and agriculture, which is now developing for next programming period. Trainings, some study visits in Romania and Latvia. I told that this was our main partners in developing the network. Thank you.
Aurelia, thank you very much indeed. Tremendous achievements to mobilize communities, but also give them the space to do their work. After the coffee break, we will have another moderator. You won't have to look at me anymore. For someone who is active in rural development, this will be a very familiar figure. It's Hannes Lorenzen. And Hannes, we know two things about him. The first is that for decades he's been involved in making sure that rural actors have a voice. The other thing we know is that he comes from the island of Pellworm. And boy, have we heard about this island. On and on, this hothouse of rural development. And we let him say these things and we smile, but reality is catching up with us because the next speaker, Levin Petersen, he's from Pellworm. He's someone who comes from an island of 1,200 inhabitants and another activist. So maybe there is something in the fact that this is a very wonderful place. And if you're going to be an activist on an island that is a couple of meters above sea level, well, there's probably one leading topic that will lead you on. Levin, please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Levin Petersen. I have grown up on Pellworm. Pellworm is an island in the North Sea of on the German coast, and altogether we are 1,200 island inhabitants. We are traditionally a farming and a fishing community, but more recently tourism and renewable energies play an important role in our economy. One thing you should know right away is our island lies 1 meter below sea level. I went to the island school until I was 16. If you want to go to secondary school, you have to move to the mainland. That's what I did. But I was happy to be able to return on weekends. Especially this year, when I have been living further away in the city of Hamburg, I realized what the island means to me. To be honest, the island is the reason why I want to get involved in politics. When I say politics, I do not mean party politics. I am talking about the future of my home island and how to keep it a place that one likes to live on. Because there are several issues. For instance, the increase of tourism has a strong impact on the housing market. Houses are being transformed to second homes and holiday flats, and young families who want to move, who want to live and work on the island, have it hard to find affordable living. While at the same time, there are job opportunities in the building trades, in service, and in home office work. And this is a real shame, I think, because young people and young families are those it needs to contribute to community life. Another thing that I'm very worried about for the future of Pelvorm is climate change. With my brother and friends, we joined Fridays for Future in 2019, soon after Greta had started with school strikes. You should imagine Pelvorm like a pudding bowl. The rim is an 8-meter high dike surrounding us. The pudding is our land and 1 meter under sea level. At low tide, the Wadden Sea around us may look nice and calm. But with sea levels rising and storms getting stronger, you can feel pretty threatened. Also, our farmers have to deal with longer periods of drought, sometimes followed by long periods of rain and flooding. In winter, the fields can stay underwater for months. In summer, rain may not fall at all. It is difficult to keep up with these changes, but I know everyone tries. The moment when I realized that change is possible was a public meeting of our local council. There were many people in the audience. The topic of the evening was the question whether our council would decide to join the lawsuit against the German federal government. A farmer family, supported by Greenpeace, was taking the German government to court for violating the rights of property and choice of economic activity, for ignoring the impact of climate change for future generations. The atmosphere in the town hall was very tense. The council decided not to join lawsuit. The political parties were unable to agree and missed the chance of a strong signal. I was disappointed. But in the end, after a second lawsuit, we did win. The German Constitutional Court sentenced the German federal government to implement stronger measures against climate change. Let me close with a picture. I remember one heavy storm of 2 days and nights in 2013. The water had piled up against the German Bay. The tide was expected to reach the highest point at midnight. My dad was on duty with the fire brigade, checking water levels and dike security. He said waves got up to 3/3 of the 8-meter high dike, and it was not clear how long the storm would continue. That night, everyone was up and ready to help. And that is what I want to say. In a small, rural community, and especially on an island, it is important that people pull together beyond political parties and come up with creative solutions to meet the many challenges. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be part of this European Rural Parliament, and I'm curious for what is still to come.
Thank you very, very much, Levin. Vielen Dank. This was an excellent presentation from an island 1 meter below the sea level. And it is a cry for climate actions. It is a cry to governments, to people, decision makers, to do something about it. Our next speaker has been working all his life with rural development, but his latest achievements is around climate. Climate actions, local climate actions, community climate actions. I have to go back a little bit in the history. He was also working a lot to build civil society networks in Eastern Europe, in the Balkans, building leader networks in different countries. His heart was with Balkans and Eastern Europe. We have to thank him for this excellent work. We will soon hear the next speaker. Before that, I will also want to thank him for his excellent work for all the rural people and rural development that he has done for us. So our next speaker will be speaking from a garden, from an island, from UK. He's Professor Michael Dower. He was not able to come here, but we will have a nice recording from him. So please, if we can get Michael Dower on the scene or on the screen. Thank you.
Dear friends, greetings to you all. I salute those who are attending this meeting and those who are organizing it. I remember with great pleasure the first three European Rural Parliaments, 2013, 2015 and 2017, and particularly the process of agreeing in 2015 the European Rural Manifesto. I am so pleased to be a member of this great network with member organizations in over 40 countries, partners at European level, national rural parliaments happening in many countries, and the youth membership. I know that this time, held in Poland, which is very appropriate because of its centrality in Europe and because of the leading role it has played in welcoming and supporting refugees from Ukraine. I'm so pleased that we are meeting here, and I know that you will wish to update and reaffirm the main purposes which we have adopted since the beginning. The protection of the well-being of rural populations, the strengthening of services, the diversification of the rural economies, the enabling of young people, encouraging and enabling young people to stay living in the countryside. But also I hope that you will wish, and I'm glad to see that the program provides for you to discuss some of the main forces which have become stronger, or which have emerged indeed, during the last 3 years since we met in Spain. I'm thinking particularly of climate change, of the loss of wildlife, of competition for resources around the world and within Europe, and of migration of people into and within Europe. I want to speak briefly about each of those four themes. On climate change, the last few years have made us all painfully aware of the hard reality of climate change. We have seen a palpable rising of the temperature, of the atmospheric temperature, drought, floods, terrible fires going as far north in Europe as the Arctic Circle, and adverse impacts, therefore, on living conditions, on food supplies, and people's well-being. We are increasingly recognizing that this climate change is mainly caused by people burning fossil fuels. coal, gas, and oil. We know, and the European Union has recognized in its Green Deal, that we have to reduce the burning of fossil fuels drastically. We have to develop renewable energy, and to take action to reduce our general impact upon energy. Now, this implies that we should be thinking hard about solar energy, about other forms of renewable energy, such as biomass and heat pumps and the like, many of which can be well deployed in the rural areas. And this points towards a rethinking of land use and rural economy. Secondly, we must face up to the appalling loss of wildlife as a result of urbanization, of intensive farming, of deforestation, and other actions by mankind. This is having devastating effects upon wildlife, which is itself a shame, but also has very strong adverse impacts upon human well-being. The European Union has adopted the biodiversity strategy, which implies change in the whole system of farming with greater respect for wildlife. It implies great additions to our forests and better management of our forests, greater care for soil and water and the like. These have major implications, again, for the rural economy and for the use of rural land. The third great force which we have to take account of is the growing demand around the world for resources of all kinds. For example, minerals, timber, food, and this is almost certain to rise further with the growth of the world's population and the rising demands which everybody is making for resources. This points towards the need for much sharper thinking about food security and resource security, and also about greater self-sufficiency within Europe in the face of this competition from China and elsewhere. So this points again towards rethinking of rural land use and diversifying of the rural economy. The fourth great force is migration. We are already experiencing heavy depopulation, movement away from more remote and deep rural areas, such as some of the Mediterranean countries and some of the Scandinavian margins. We have long been used to depopulation of some regions as particularly young people move from the countryside into the cities. We have also increasingly see people moving out from the cities into the nearer countryside, looking for housing and for a good life. And this has been intensified by the effects of the COVID pandemic. But what we're now increasingly seeing is a great flow of migration into Europe from countries which are suffering strife, such as Syria, Afghanistan, and now the Ukraine, or from countries in Africa, for example, which are impoverished and becoming unlivable because of climate change. In a way, Europe is collectively becoming a lifeboat for mankind, forced by climate change and conflicts. This is placing pressure on all of us, particularly on the cities, but we should also see it as a potential opportunity to repopulate the countryside and to bring new resources and strengths to the rural economy. So, in the light of these four and other great forces of change, I'm very glad to see that your program permits you to open up the implications of change in the world and change on the forces affecting Europe in a way which could allow us, I believe, to revive and revitalize the rural areas, to secure that there is population in the more remote and deep rural places, and to move, as we agreed through the manifesto, in the words of the manifesto, to ensure that all Europe shall live. I wish you well in your discussions.
Thank you very much. Some of the topics that Michael talked about in his film, the question of the challenges of democracy, they will be addressed in the next panel. Climate action is something that is going to be coming throughout the Parliament, but particularly at the Conversation Cafe that takes place after the workshops. In his speech at the opening on Monday evening, young Krzysztof Ardanowski mentioned the fact that a significant number of the Polish population lives in rural areas, and the same is true for Ukraine. About 1/3 of Ukraine's women live in rural areas, and the Rural Women's Business Network is an organization that supports those women and women farmers, and I'm delighted to be able to invite Sofia Burtak to present her work.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting the Ukrainian delegation for the rural parliament here in Poland. And from the way how we will present our situation, I would like you to understand the full picture how the rural areas are living right now in Ukraine, and to understand what we are going through and what kind of actions and resilience of Ukrainian farmers which we are now experiencing. And actually everything is in process, but now we have the stories, and they are inspirational, and they have a lot of knowledge into what can be done and what can be used for our joint future. First of all, Ukraine, as you might imagine, is the big country by the territory and by the scope of the land, by scope of the human capital which lives in the rural areas. We are having 60.4 million of hectares of land which is cultivated, and a lot of farmers are different kind of sizes and variety of value chains are cultivating the food to supply almost half of the world. So this part of the mission of the Ukrainian rural population was one of the priority, one of the strategy to live and to flourish and to have the well-being in the rural places as well. Right now, what we are facing, right now we have the resources which are shortened in the way how our neighbor Russia attacked Ukraine. And here we have great losses in the communities, rural communities. More than 300 rural communities now are occupied and are facing non-controlled by Ukrainian government situation. We have as well businesses, more than 4,000 of businesses which are not functioning properly, which don't have enough space, don't have enough resources to market, grow, or harvest their production. As well, Ukraine now is under the losses and destroy of productive land and as well productive farming. We have right now a lot of animal farms which are damaged. The statistics of the ministry says that up to 200 animal farms which are completely destroyed or their land is completely in the loss. The land of agro production as well right now is damaged by the missile attacks, by the hazard of the weapon, and this is a lot. It's almost 3 million hectares which now are destroyed. We are in the situation when the farmers become more and more anxious about their future because of the migration as well. A lot of farmers had to migrate, and you can imagine how it's morally, physically, and economically for the farmer not to be connected to his or her own land. And we have as well a lot of, let's say, attempts to relocate the farming business. And under this relocation, we already have a success, and we have possibilities for the small producers to reproduce their farming at the other place in another territory. My today's story is about Anna. Anna is one of the relocated farmers, and she was moving all around Ukraine in the hope that she will return back to her native home. She was producer of herbs and teas, and she was very inspired. She invested a lot into her business, but under the occupation in Zaporizhia Oblast, she ended up in Lviv region, where we tried to help her to start over and to have the supply for her business. What worked well and what the factors we can share right now which really worked. This is the local partnership. The partnership of local farmer who shared his land, and under the extension service support to consult Anna and this farmer, and under the international aid projects which helped to bring the resources to install the greenhouses. In this complex, it can work, and now Anna has a good harvest of the cucumbers. And she is eligible to support her family. She can sell her farming production, and even more, she has the demand for her production, which is higher than she can produce right now. So this resilience can show how much the local partnership, how much the help and support from the community where she lives right now. And another kind of very important issue is how the extension support can supplement, can accompany this process. First of all, we are not away from the climate change, and climate is influencing heavily the farmers in Ukraine as well. But the farmers who are moving from one place to another under this kind of migration process need a lot of new knowledge, and how to relocate his knowledge from one place to another. It's a big challenge to know the soil content, to know how to farm properly in these climate conditions, what kind of the crops and varieties of vegetable he or she can grow. So under the network of rural women, we have a lot of inside communication. We have expertise and sharing of knowledge. We have extension services who accompany all of the process. So that gives more calmness, resilience, and insurance that farmer can still relocate the business. Another challenge is about the marketing. So marketing channels in Ukraine right now are destroyed. The logistics is completely in other wheels, and we need to restructure as well the way how the farmers can market their products. Before the war, we had a lot of discussion how to be in line with the EU standards of the quality. Right now, there is no question from any farmer to comply with the standardization, certifications, and this caused a lot of change in their attitude, in their mind, to be more competitive, to be more, to rely more on their quality standardization of the process, of the products, and to be helpful for the market and to supply the market. In our case, we are working with a model of cooperatives, and we believe that the localization of the processing, we believe that local branding, labeling can help our farmers to keep their dignity, to keep their economical resilience, and to be competitive and supply the markets, which we know actually needs Ukrainian production to feed the world. About the cooperatives and farmers who are creating completely new ways, we have as well case of our farm, which was recently the missile attack and the big rocket fall into their yard. So this farm start to restore their capacity to farm in 2 days. They were so believers into their farming, into their dairy production. They are processing the cheeses that only 2 days bring a lot of people from all around the Dnipro region, this is the east of Ukraine, who donated more than 1 million of hryvnias to the account of the farmer to buy again the food which was lost for the animals, to restore the yard where the animals were kept, and to construct the new barn for the cows. So all the society which strongly believes in the our future, the society supports farmers. This can really change the attitude to who are the farmers, what are the well-being level at the rural area, and how we can imply all the quality standards into our work. So the case of Zelený High farm of the dairy producer, case of Anna Ishchenko, producer in past the herbs, now vegetables, and the case of our all Ukrainian women who right now are, how to say, they take over all the farming into their shoulders, because you can imagine that a lot of our farmer men now are in military service, so women have double or triple responsibilities to produce, to process, and to market the products. And in a way how we can teach and how we can learn to cooperate the producers between themselves. And cooperative model is very deep in values. So the cooperation can go beyond one country. Intercooperation is one of the principles of the cooperatives in the whole world. So we believe that intercooperation between different countries can change the attitude to the rural development, to marketing channels, and to new strategies in export and import in Europe. Thank you for your attention. And the whole delegation is over here. You've heard the singing. From the whole delegation, we want to thank for your hospitality for the whole Europe. I szczególnie dziękujemy Polakom, którzy w tym czasie zabezpieczyli tyle dobrych spraw dla Ukraińców. Bardzo dziękujemy.
Thank you, Sofia. I'm angry, you're angry, I am sad, you are sad. People are killed, food is destroyed. There are wars in Ukraine, there is wars in Armenia. We are one Europe. We are people of Europe. We are rural people of Europe. We must be solidarity. We have to have the solidarity. We must not forget that there is a war. We must support now and post-war. We are all in this together. We must thank also Poland receiving so many Ukrainians here in Poland. Thank you. Ukraine has started discussions also with the European Union to approach Europe. We will also like to start negotiation for you also to approach the European Parliament family. So we are welcome to start those discussions. So thank you very much for you to come here, and I'm really sad for everything that is happening. I hope you all are. So I now ask our last speaker of this session. He is from the Balkan Rural Development Network, the president, Petar Georgievski. He's presenting through 3 stories what is happening in the Balkans and looking a little bit into the future. Please, Petar, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really happy to talk on behalf of the Balkan Rural Development Network, organization that unites all the rural development networks from the Balkans, from Albania, Kosovo, Serbia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, and Croatia is also part of this network. I will try to be as brief as possible and to present several processes, major processes based on projects as most important successful stories. And definitely I would like to start with the leader approach, which is a very evident process in the Western Balkans, one of the leading socioeconomic development processes. I must say that it was supported by our friends, our partners from the German Technical Cooperation, from GIZ. And the main goal of this process was to get back the leader approach on the agenda and to anchor it on 3 major levels. The first between the authorities and the decision makers, the second at the local level, where the local action groups and local action group initiatives are operating, and where on the third level, where the rural development networks act as knowledge hubs and connect each one's efforts. But the core outcome, or the heart of this project, entitled as Standing Up for Leader, are the 7 roadmaps. By the way, this document, you can find it on the stand of North Macedonia. It's quite an interesting and comprehensive document, which 7 countries and the national road maps of Albania, Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Republic of Srpska, Serbia, Montenegro, Kosovo, and North Macedonia, are road maps that are not only just recommendations, These roadmaps have been negotiated with the governments. They are approved by the governments, national governments. And basically there are commitments explaining where and which of these countries are at the current stage and what are the future steps for progressing for development of the leader approach. So at national level, some of the countries, some of the decision makers in each countries develop structures, regulations, how this process should follow, how it should be structured. Some of them have invested in national support schemes, like Albania, North Macedonia, and Serbia. Some of them are intended to put in place these schemes with a mixed donor approach, like Kosovo, for example. And there were still efforts to revive the leader process after a period of waiting and something to be changed, like in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And at the local level, the local action groups exist in several countries. Some of them are active, some are not so active. Like in North Macedonia, we have like 13 local action groups that are registered, covering 2/3 of the entire territory. 9 of them already received some government support from the national schemes. Also, we have the similar process in Serbia. We have 22 lakhs ready to receive some support. In Montenegro, we still do not have registered local action groups, but we have some initiatives. And some of them has been quite silent, witnessing the past projects, like in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we have a very diverse situation concerning the situation with the local action groups in the Western Balkans. But what is very important in this third level, and most encouraging things, that the existence of the rural networks and the national networks, but also the Balkan Rural Development Network. And we have witnessed the presenting of the roadmaps on the last Balkan Rural Parliament that was held in 2021, where the roadmaps were presented. What we have to say that in the future, and what is important about the leader approach, is that the rural development networks and the Balkan Rural Development Network are going to continue to be active participant in the leader type projects. It is important to mention that the strengthening of the bottom-up approach should continue, and of course that the government should build upon the work of national networks and the Balkan Rural Development Network. And also it is important to mention that in the countries that are receiving the support from the European Union through the IPA, through IPART, to try to open and to accelerate the process of accreditation of the so-called technical assistant measure, that the funds can be used for developing the process and continuation of the leader approach. The next successful story or project I have to mention is the so-called Networking and Advocacy for Green Economy project that was supported by the European Union. Project that was led by the Macedonian network, but all the networks from the Western Balkan were part of this project, with an overall goal to enhance the policy and decision-making impact on the Balkan Rural Development Network, with 3 specific sub-objectives. And the first one is strengthening the grassroots civil society organizations in the process of the capacity building, introduction the concept of green economy as a cross-cutting model, and of course to use an evidence-based policy by BRDN, the Balkan Rural Development Network, and to promote the green economy. We have, this project was really productive, developed a lot of products, tools, through different trainings. For example, I can mention that we also had a grant scheme, so 35 grassroots civil society organizations were awarded to implement different green economy projects involving enterprises. We had 19 green economy caravans. We had 12 journalist stories contests, and we have developed a very interesting video called Balkan Green Business Stories. You can find it on our website. And I want to mention that this green economy approach is very much linked to the European Green Deal, which is reflected in the so-called green agenda of the Western Balkan countries, a topic that is really important for the Western Balkans. But of course, this process cannot be done only by the governments, but it is important to mention that the civil society structures, organizations should fully participate in this process and promote and raise the awareness of the green economy. Also, what is very important to mention, the projects and successful stories relate to rural women and youth. Rural youth is a very important group of people in the rural areas. Balkan Rural Development Network started to initiate a lot of activities on the regional level, like the so-called Rural Youth Camp, which brings together rural youth from different countries to talk about different topics, to exchange experience. I must say that this initiative was started from the Rural Development Network of Montenegro, and BRDN has continued to promote this approach, this Rural Youth Camp on the regional level, into a regional event, promoting important youth activism, connecting rural youth in the Western Balkans. And each year, this Rural Development Youth Camp is organized and on different topics. For example, a few years ago, we had this in Montenegro, where the main topic was the leader approach and what is the role of the young people, how to address issues in the local development policies, how to be more proactive. And of course, another group which is very important in the rural areas, these are rural women. I must say that the Rural Development Network of North Macedonia traditionally celebrates, maybe in the past 5-6 years, the October 15, which is International Day of Rural Women. Started as a national activity, and again through the Balkan Rural Development Network becomes a regional activity, which also includes the networks, members of the Balkan Rural Development Network. So I have to say at the end that about the young people, that they need a variety of satisfying and fairly paid jobs, a well-targeted education system, access to land, social, cultural activities, and the interest of rural youth should be put in the center of the rural strategy, and the policies should include specific measures targeted at young people. Same applies when we talk about the women. Rural women should be recognized as key drivers in the rural development and to be treated as guardians of our tradition and heritage in the rural areas. Governments and civil society should recognize these needs and to find a mechanism to support and stimulate the creative role of rural life through active support programs. At the end, I would like to conclude that these 4 major processes are part of the Balkan Rural Development Declaration, which was developed at the last Balkan Rural Parliament that was held in 2021 in Ohrid, in North Macedonia. And we hope that these efforts, these issues will be taken seriously by the decision makers, and it will consider them in the policies and to be part of the rural development policies in the future that will contribute to the better life and to the livelihood of rural communities in the Western Balkans. Thank you very much.
Petar, thank you very much indeed. I have some housekeeping announcements that I would like to make before you all disappear for the coffee break. The first important announcement is on the back of your name tab, you will find a QR code. You will also find the letters T, W, and W. T was yesterday, so you can ignore that. But if you have nothing written next to the W's, there's no number there, please use this break now to find out which workshop you're in. This is important for the logistics after lunch. When you return from the coffee break, which I will ask you to do by 11:05, we're slowly catching up on the delay, and we want to give Hannes and his wonderful panel as much time as possible to do their work. There are QR codes attached to the entrance doors and out in the area where the coffee is being served, past the registration desk. If you could scan the QR code, this will give you access to some documents which will be discussed in this panel. I deeply admire the multitasking ability of some of you who can listen to the speeches and read whatever's on your smartphones, but I'm not quite convinced by it yet. So if you could if you're really sure you could do it, okay. But otherwise, it would be nice for the speakers who can see you all, in spite of the bright lights, if you could just put those aside. The presentations we saw will be available on the website of the Parliament after the event. And I invite you to coffee now until 11:05. And if there's a huge line for coffee, there is water, which is a wonderful thing, or juices. So please don't let that be an excuse for you to come late. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I thought my voice was already in the room, but it's not enough. Welcome back, everybody. Would you be so kind to take a seat? We start our panel now about the future for Europe. And of course, this is a broad theme, but I think it's good from time to time to say there's one thing which is rural, and that's super important. But rural is also part of a broader Europe. So this panel will try to look at the future of Europe from different angles. And panelists with me have prepared in two ways. We have looked at some poetry, and we have looked at an article which could stimulate us to have a real conversation, not statements, but real conversations. And the rule of this panel is each of us has 6 minutes, except of course the moderator, to talk. And we will all take good care of these 6 minutes, because then we really have a conversation and I don't have to stop people talking. So we have a watch here in front of us where we see how much time is passing when we talk. And now I would like, for warming up, I think it's very important to have some poetry. And I would like to ask Dominika to come on stage and do a recitation of a poem from Wisława Szymborska. A friend of mine has given me, when I was learning Polish some time ago, poetry from her. And I found back one poem which she wrote, I think something like 12 years ago. And it will be now presented to you by Dominika. Thank you, Dominika. You will get a translation.
Wisława Szymborska. Dzieci epoki. Jesteśmy dziećmi epoki. Epoka jest polityczna. Wszystkie twoje, nasze, wasze, dzienne sprawy, nocne sprawy, to są sprawy polityczne. Chcesz czy nie? Twoje geny mają przyszłość polityczną. Skóra odcień polityczny, oczy aspekt polityczny. O czym mówisz ma rezonans, o czym milczysz ma wzmowę. Tak czy owak, polityczną. Nawet idąc borem, lasem, stawiasz kroki polityczne na podłożu politycznym. Wiersze apolityczne też są polityczne, a w górze świeci księżyc. Obiekt już nie księżycowy. Być albo nie być. Oto jest pytanie. Jakie pytanie? Odpowiedz, kochanie. Pytanie polityczne. Nie musisz nawet być istotą ludzką, by zyskać na znaczeniu politycznym. Wystarczy, żebyś był ropą naftową, paszą treściwą, surowcem wtórnym albo stołem obrad, o którego kształt spierano się miesiącami. Przy jakim pertraktować o życiu i śmierci? Okrągłym czy kwadratowym? Tymczasem ginęli ludzie, zdychały zwierzęta, płonęły domy i dziczały pola. Jak w epokach zamierzchłych i mniej politycznych.
Dziękuję bardzo. You heard one word in this poem that was reappearing, political. There's a lot of confusion about politics or political. And I think this morning we already heard why people want to get political, influencing, not necessarily party politics. And I think this is a very important distinction. Now, I would like to start our panel with Radim. Radim Sisam, he is from the Czech Republic, and he's Deputy Minister of Regional Development. He's also Mayor of the municipality of Dolní Studenky. And he's a member of, he was a member of the Council on Olomouc region. He's assistant professor at the University of Economics in Prague. And he was president of ELARD. So, Radim, you have the view almost on all European levels. And right now, your government is leading the European Union in the Council. That must be a tough job. What would you say, what is the best level to prepare the future of Europe? Where would you put your accent? Where democracy, where solidarity, where all the values we are talking about in Europe are strongest?
So, good morning, or yes, still morning to everybody. It's a great pleasure to be for the 5th time. I've been participating at all the European Rural Parliament so far, because first of all, I am the proud rural citizen, so I live in a rural area. I'm just commuting to Prague and living in a hotel, otherwise being a deputy minister, staying in the rural area, because I think it's crucial that the people who are designing the future of rural areas are really living by heart and soul in the rural areas. When I was 26, I had a decision to take after studies in Denmark and internship in Brussels and also a job opportunity in Brussels. I decided to come back to my rural area, which is a real rural area, 250 kilometers from Prague. The time all my friends said, you are crazy, you are coming back to zoo or museum. But I said, no, I have to come back. Maybe it was because my mother, she was a mayor at that time, and I just changed her afterwards. I also created a local action group established in our area. But I am very happy that I made this decision, and that's also the answer to the question. I very much believe that the main level is the local level, and I think what the European Union is missing sometimes, the ivory tower, that, more participation and more initiatives going bottom up, and it shouldn't be just phrases, because we have long-term vision for rural areas, it's amazing document, but what I feel, we are missing the action, from the bottom up, and we need to bring it from the sky to the earth, as I'm always saying, and we should realize it. And now there is unique opportunity. I believe that all the crises that come bring opportunity and challenge. And both crises, either COVID crisis or also the war in Ukraine and connected energy crisis, is a great opportunity for rural revival and transformation of rural areas, which could speed up the process for, according to my opinion, by 20 years. And we should really grab this opportunity. We should be all proud citizens of rural areas, and we should start from the bottom. And that's my also position. I am a mayor, and I am kind of spy, rural spy, or ombudsman of local governments and local action groups in the ministry. I was asked by minister to be the one, and we realize it as a government that it's important, and it's also one of the priorities of our presidency, really, to bring rural areas on board. We have two very important events during the presidency, focusing on smart villages and CLLD, and I think we want to bring this topic also on the European level, because the rural areas cannot be left behind, because Europe starts in the rural areas.
Wonderful. 2 minutes. This is a good way of spending your time. Maybe for interpreters, it's a hard time as you spoke very fast. So I think we can be completely relaxed. 6 minutes is a lot of time. Marion Eckert. Well, I think everybody knows her. She's around for a long time on rural development. She's from Sweden. She's active on the local level on her lag in southeast Sweden, southwest Sweden. And when I talk to Marion, I often have the feeling, you know, everything started there. National Rural Parliament, Swedish invention. Big gift to Europe. Everybody followed you. Hela Sverige ska leva. Michael Dauer said, all Europe shall live. So you gave a big gift, Sweden, you gave a big gift to Europe. But in a sense, when I look now at the elections in Sweden, and when I see the cliff-hanging situation, whether the right wing might take over, I don't know, you interpret that for us. What kind of view do you think do Swedish people have, except of course all the rural people you are working with? What kind of view do Swedish people have when they look at Europe? My feeling was always, it's a critical view. And you remember my quote, in Sweden we have a system.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for this really timely question. It has engaged me a lot the last couple of days, the election results in Sweden. I think we always need to respect the choice of the people electing, and they're choosing a party that is coming from the right wing, but is not a fascist party, to be very honest. What I think this comes from people not being happy with the system. We see also very much it is the rural citizens going for that party. They are classical or are party that has been very strong in the rural areas traditionally has lost a lot. I think that the rural people feel that they are not being heard. And I think that this all has to do with, this is like only my personal interpretation of the situation, is that we are missing the local level. We are centralizing a lot in Sweden. I think the European Union will never be able to reach to the local citizens from the European Commission itself. I mean, we have these wonderful initiatives like we talked about yesterday from the future of the conference on the future of Europe, where we're trying to be participative, but to be honest, you know, we are millions of people that are living in Europe. How many have heard about this? How many knows that they have the possibility to affect what we're doing in the European Union? I think very, very few of our citizens. At the same time, we see that we are putting less and less possibility for participative democratic methodology. For example, leader, less and less money, more and more bureaucracy, and you know, who is supposed to be out there then and collect our citizens? Who is supposed to do that? We need to invest in that, and that I think goes for all over Europe. We are not investing in the local democracy, and I think that is why we are losing, because it's not only in Sweden, as we all know, it is all over Europe.
Thank you very much, Marion. I would like to introduce to you Tomas Sutic. I hope my pronunciation is okay, more or less. From Croatia, member of the cabinet of the Vice President of the European Commission, Dubravka Šuica, who is responsible for democracy and demography. And at the cabinet, Tomas Sutic is responsible, among others, for deliberate and participative democracy, legal aspects of the future of Europe, interests of national stakeholders, aging, among others. Quite a dossier, I would say. Toma, I would like to ask you the following questions. You've listened right now, I suppose, to the speech of the President of the European Commission on the future of Europe. And when you look, I suppose, the text that was out before on the three big values on democracy, sustainability, and solidarity, are those values, looking at the future of Europe, resilient to all the challenges that we face? I mean, we've discussed that a lot. And looking at the speech of the President of the European Commission, is there hope that we can progress without losing some countries? We've seen some countries moving out of the Union, some countries not respecting fully the laws of the European Union. So what is your view of the chances of Europe to be resilient in all these challenges?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the question, but also thank you for the invitation to be here. It's a pleasure to experience this couple of days together with you. And in fact, I'm quite enjoying this panel to a certain extent, because it's relatively high level, just as the work of the Vice President is. But I think it's also important to, when we talk about resilience, very specifically, we can only build resilience based on values. So I wouldn't put the values in question at all. Values are our values, they are here to stay, and they are what will in fact sustain us through moments of hardship. And in fact, turning towards values will result in a more resilient society. But in order to do so, we need to be able to be connected to everyone within Europe. And this is why events like this one today are very important. It's important that we all connect and share our thoughts, our ideas, our challenges, and the problems that we are faced. And then together, in a conversation that is open and inclusive, create our future values as well. So it's a question of balancing, sticking to what we believe is important and dear to us, at the same time, and creating a new reality and new set of rules with which we live. And this is something that is very practical, and this is something that we in the Commission are faced with every day, because we have to make the trade-offs between how do we impose sanctions to Russia versus how do we sustain our citizens and ensure that their energy bills don't go through the roof. And this is why we have this approach of inclusive and participatory democracy, where we want to include the citizens in the decisions and also in finding the solutions. Because it's not up to us to impose the solutions, it's up to us to listen to the ideas of the citizens and see how we can best, with the limited resources that we have, come up with the best joint solutions.
Thank you very much, Toma. To my right is Katrina Idu from Latvia, and she is president of Forum Synergies. She has studied at Sorbonne in France, so she has some European experience and vision. She's also working for ELAD, so she is in the rural family, and she's among us here at the panel, the youngest. So of course I will try to get a question to you for the future of Europe, which has appeared yesterday at some of the discussions and workshop with youth people. Is it really always about more involvement of young people into something we are doing, or isn't it time for a kind of takeover? My feeling is, with all the experience we have made in rural parliaments, national, European rural parliaments, in civil society, this intergenerational work, this taking over of young people, of organizations like the European Rural Parliament, is a challenge. What do you think would be, the right way of getting the younger generation on top, so that a few elderlies like us would be with a lot of people, young people, saying, we are going to take the lead? Katrina.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you for this. Let's see what we can do with it. I think the main answer how to organize this takeover is to trust them, to trust young people, because they are able to do a lot of good things. And we saw it yesterday in the World Café by Youth, that they are proposing really important topics that comes from them, and then sometimes we don't even think that it's important for them. We are putting an agenda on youth because we think it's important for them, for example, to have a good infrastructure so that they can get where they want to get. We haven't had any table about infrastructure. We had more and more tables about how we can help each other, how can we transform us and help transform our local communities, how can we bring messages to the decision makers, but not about how to get from point A to point B in a rural area. And I think that's a good change as well in the way we see the important questions for youth. Just let them give you those questions and let them do things, and it works.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday when I was at that meeting. There were lots of questions which were chosen by the young people, and they had already a lot of answers. But there was always this point, do we have really the support we need to take over?
Mm.
Thank you. I move forward and we come back to the next round then. And Goran Soster, he's also well known because he was one of the pioneers of the national rural parliaments in Central and Eastern Europe. He has done a documentation on those national rural parliaments in a book. Your manager in your region of a local action group. Goran, you are kind of in Slovenia in a situation, I have the feeling, where things are going quite well. People look at you as the lucky ones from former Yugoslavia. You were in quite early. You have neighbors who are expecting something from Slovenia. You had the presidency recently. Would you say Slovenia and what you do can have a positive impact on the future of your neighbors in the Western Balkans?
I hope so. Whereby, if you would ask, there are some statistics, barometers on values, how people feel, and we are surprised that most of Slovenians are not satisfied with what we have. people are not aware of the wellness which we achieved in these years. I mean, in years after the Second World War. The basement for that was, of course, earlier in the culture, in the tradition, also in relationships shaped by policies, politicians. So we cannot estimate something like you questioned from the point now, here and now. You have to have awareness of the history, how and why we came to this point. Today in Slovenia, for instance, and in this part of Europe, is a lot of nostalgic on the ages before, on the decades before, 90s, for instance, because we have lost with this wild system grabbing for the property, grabbing for the power, grabbing for the privileges. This became very wild. It was not the case before the 90s, I think, at least in our part of Europe. There was some kind of agreement. Some groups, some social groups or political groups were, of course, excluded. The system was not well functioning, of course. But there were some values which had better quality than we have it today. We have to be aware of that. So maybe this is the reason why most of the people, or many people, are not satisfied with the wellness which we achieved, because they know there is another dimension, and I would say it's social dimension, which is so important today. And we are losing that. We are not losing only the rural areas getting empty, missing the flats for young people, like in Pelvorm we heard today. There are so many local problems, but there are also global challenges. Michael mentioned 4 of them, which are very much influencing local level, whereby we are not, at the local level, we are not always aware of them.
Yeah. So you agree with Marion that the things that would be the very basis and needs most of attention is the local level, because there people are either happy or frustrated, and from there they see Europe and not the other way around.
I think the all 5 rural parliaments give this very clear statement about importance of the local level. And if I may mention what is happening around the world, which is maybe one of the urban answers to the situation which I mentioned, is creation of sense of locality, in sense of égalité, fraternité, and so on, the old values which are reflected in the 7 principles of leader, of course. And alternative society is emerging at the local level. If the states are not solving the problems which are crucial for the existence, then they invent new relationships. Whatever states does, local people are resilient. They will survive. We will survive.
Sorry, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I was pushing you a bit into your minutes, but that was my fault, so I take care of that. Normans Poppins from Latvia. I would like to get you as the last but not least, of course, into this round. You are Deputy Director General and the Director General for Regional and Urban Policy of the European Commission, DG Regio. And you are overseeing and managing the implementation of the Cohesion Fund programs. And I suppose you are very busy these days in getting the programs ready. I'm more in my career in the European institutions. I was always on the side of agriculture, and we saw the regional people more on the urban side of things. Now you've been involved into the visioning process of Rural Europe 2040. Would you say that there is kind of appearing peace between agriculture and rural with the help of regional policy?
Thank you. In my title, you forget to say that I'm in charge of urban policy in the Commission.
Sorry.
So
Yes.
I am an urban person. I go to many meetings with our cities, and I just come from Potsdam, where we discussed a new work stream with G7 ministers on urban development. Everybody acknowledges that cities are the centers of development in the world, but they are also the centers of problems. They pollute, they don't have good social inclusion policies, they don't have sometimes good even infrastructure and mobility. And I'm not afraid to say I'm an urban person, but for the last 5 years I've been living in rural area as well. Why? Because rural area has that offer of which many people are looking at. Of course, my rural area is close to the city, so that was a decisive factor, and many people choose those rural areas around big cities to stay there, to live there, to pay their taxes, and to really create that local sense of locality there. But rural areas are very different. We know that. And that's why, of course, it's very difficult to say what is the recipe, because there is not one recipe fits all. Indeed, I hope that one day we will stop contradicting rural and urban. And this is what we are trying to do in Regio and under the cohesion policy. And I think this is what we try to show with a long-term vision for rural areas. We really tried to place rural areas as an integral part of European territorial landscape. And when you say agriculture, certainly agriculture plays extremely important part, not just for rural areas, for all of us, for the food production and everything. But it's not just agriculture, which is the future of rural areas. I'm happy I heard the names smart villages and local development groups. We are supporting all of that through cohesion policy. We want to show that only in cooperation between different types of territories we will succeed. Particularly, when I talk about urban, for example, I always talk about small cities. Small cities have important roles to play within the broader rural settings and broader territorial settings. So yes, I hope we will arrive one day. We are still not there, but cohesion policy, I think, is well placed to stimulate that necessary cooperation at territorial levels. And we are also always thinking about further ways to engage better with local actors. You know that our smart specialization, our new policy objective 5, everything is about cooperation, about stimulating different dialogues between different levels of governance, different stakeholders, and coming up with solutions for concrete territories. Yeah, so I stop here because I think today's speech of our President, Ursula von der Leyen, actually had very important messages which might mean quite an important breakthrough in terms of permanent engagement of citizens. And also, I really like the part on the protecting our democracies. But I think we will talk about it now.
Yes, thank you very much. Cohesion policy. Principle is solidarity. Help each other to move forward. My question, when we look at climate change and we look at the difficulty that a lot of resources are now going into defense, German Chancellor put all of a sudden out of the pocket 100 billion into getting the military, the German military, up to the situation. This morning, interesting enough, the Fridays for Future movement in Germany said, okay, if you found from the left pocket 100 billion for military, what about taking from the right side 100 billion for climate change? There's a clash. There is a difficulty now to deal with the situation. We cannot always repeat that climate change is important. Where are the means? Where are the restructuring? Where is money to help people to establish the infrastructure that was missing, as Katrina said? The support to make rural areas, but also urban areas, resilient for shocks like now, the shock on prices for gas. Radim mentioned it. I don't know, who wants to take the micro, I don't want to open a second round, but I just want to open this question. The clash is clear. The means for and the attention and the steps to do something against climate change seem to be a bit further away than anything else. And the idea is still that we solve the problems with growth. There was yesterday a workshop on degrowth of young people, and there was a clear message. We do need degrowth. Thomas, would you like to come in? And then Radim. And I trust, as you wish, you find the order, but I trust that you keep an eye on your 6 minutes.
Okay, I will speak slower. I have still 4 minutes, because my surname in English is Hornet, so I'm speaking like a hornet sometimes. So sorry to interpreters. You know, when we have discussions either on the national level, but also in the Committee of the Regions, I'm the member of. So some people think that Green Deal and cohesion is going against each other, you know, but it's a mistake. I think there is a lot of synergy between Green Deal and cohesion, you know, and especially the rural development and the transformation, either digital, energetic transformation of rural areas. The ideas behind smart villages, participation, is like fulfilling the Green Deal. And, you know, especially the East European countries, you know, all the people think that some idiots in Brussels thought out some Green Deal, you know, and there is nothing, you know, although this is kind of war we are fighting also, and this war cannot be repeated, you know. So I think it's very important to think in synergies and really to have all the interventions we are having. We shouldn't look just, this is a box rural, this is urban, this is, I don't know, agriculture, because the Green Deal as such, we need to make much more horizontal approach to all the policies, to use all the resources, because now we have traditional cohesion funds, but we have also resilience and recovery funds, and we should interconnect it and use it for both urban and rural areas and to make the energy transformation. And that's what I mentioned in the beginning, that what I feel now, I am a mayor of a municipality in the Czech Republic. We have a high level of local democracy because we have 6,250 municipalities, and I very much believe that it's our family goal, and we do not want to merge any municipalities like in other countries. And everyone, mayor, even the municipality of 100 people, is now thinking of using the solar panels, using the energy, and this is something which is kind of pushing us, but to fulfill the obligations. So we should take it as synergy, and we should use all the instruments possible horizontally, so not to looking to the boxes of different kind of policies, but to make one policy which is applied and gets synergies.
That's a view to the future. Yesterday, young people said, but we have the feeling it never reaches us. Nice programs, big funds. Where does that come down to us? Where is it offered to us in a way that we really can take those ideas up, where we can combine, where we can do the synergies ourselves? We have the feeling, big ideas up there, in principle, very little support on the spot and very little possibilities to do the change that is so urgent to be done now. Thomas.
Thanks a lot. I think this feeling is shared by everyone. I don't think it's a feeling that is unique to young people. I think it's a feeling that's shared to everyone. Things are getting more complex. Radim was saying that things are more connected and somehow horizontally interlinked, but they are also at the same time, because of that, more complex. And that's why we all individually struggle with this feeling of, you know, not being able to cope with this complexity. And of course, the young people feel it more, but I can assure you, everybody feels it. And the only way out is, again, to do it together, to do it together through an inclusive conversation. And we cannot repeat that enough. We have complex solutions that are integrated and that have joint solutions. There is no other way around these challenges that we are faced with. you spoke a lot about, where is the money? Where are the opportunities? Where is the information? Each one of us has an individual responsibility to engage and to find it. And I think, in fact, this community here today is a great example of how people are organizing and doing exactly that. You have done enormous things for the rural communities here, and this has been done really through grassroots. For me, this event and the organization are, in fact, the inspiration to the young people. We, of course, have to listen more, but we have to also use the networks and organizations that we have.
Thank you. Katrina, you want to come in? And then Norman, and then...
Yes, I wanted to reflect on we have solutions, because I think that we have solutions. And the main idea would be not to listen to the needs and suggestions, not to gather people to listen, but to allow them to show solutions and to help them to bring those, multiply those solutions at local level, regional level, to implement them, and not only listening and adapting and getting back with solutions. We have a real example here, written from synergies with incorporation together with ARC 2020, a book which gathers a lot of solutions that are already implemented at local level by different actors in cooperation between municipalities also and NGOs, but mainly coming really from people at local level. So the solutions are here, and we just need some help to multiply them.
Thank you. Norman, and then Goran.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I agree with what has been said on the cohesion policy and the Green Deal objectives. I mean, first of all, again, today the President confirmed that if we want to really create a sustainable future, we need to have that leap. We should learn from the past mistakes when in the 70s the fossil fuel crisis led to use of more fossil fuels in Europe. So the only way forward is to really take seriously what has been agreed under the Green Deal and digital transition objectives at the EU level, and then deploy all the possible instruments to support it. And this is what we plan to do. You mentioned the programming. We are completing the cohesion policy programs, those more than 300 billion for the next 7 years. Large amounts of that, 40% at least, will go to support the Green Deal objectives, climate change, energy efficiency, environmental measures, and we are also putting in place Just Transition Fund. I think Just Transition Fund is a novelty which really targets those territories where the impact of this transition will be deep, asymmetrical, and negative. And there we really are working on the ground with some of you maybe in this room. Also in Poland, we will have Just Transition Fund in many regions where we want to see what are the recipes to diversify the economies, to help people to get trained, reskilled, and also mitigate that shift, which is necessary. We all agree. I had a presentation yesterday of the professor who basically said that in the next few years, the sea will rise by 2 meters, and in 50 years, it will be 20 meters, which means if we don't stop it, this global warming, if we can't stop it at 2%, at 2 degrees level, we are going to drown, simply. So there is no way back. We need to stick in cohesion policy together with the recovery and resilience plans and other instruments such as common agricultural policy is seriously going to support different measures linked to Green Deal. But not just the Green Deal. You mentioned infrastructure. We still have a big priority to fill in infrastructure gaps. Social, the European Social Fund together with the RDF will work on different social investment, health, education, skills, and we will invest in innovation. And lastly, also, the new policy objective genuinely can support local strategies, both urban and rural, and hopefully also rural-urban, and that is something which is novelty. And there we need to show that actually in our programs it's doable, that the CLLDs can be part of that We can use also integrated territorial investments, where more and more we see that cities work together with those rural areas. Warsaw is one example. The new Warsaw ITI will compose 26 municipalities around Warsaw. So actually Poland has a great experience on promoting these rural and urban links. We believe that the only way forward is in cooperation, as I said, but I think the priorities are there, and there's not a shortage of funding at the EU level, but it is about quality of funding and really targeting it to what will make the biggest impact for the global change, for the climate, for the Green Deal and digital transformation, but also to people, because this we shouldn't, we should keep investing in people and skills and all that. So.
Thank you very much, Norman. Your time is almost up, but that was very complex and good. So we will have another chance, perhaps, for some remarks. Goran, can I lead you, or you want to first?
I would like to reflect on this, because
good,
I think you opened a crucial question.
But then I might have another question to you. Yeah.
Okay, my background is also being organic farmer, and in this moment I cannot be polite and diplomatic. Sorry for that. I think Green Deal and all policies, national or European, are not dealing with the disease which we are facing and which is causing the global change, climate change. We are dealing with symptoms. We are only trying to avoid the damage which is caused. The real root of this disease, of this challenge, is the conflict and messing up two concepts. One is growth, as you said, and another, as alternative to that, is development. This is far not the same, but people are talking all the time about growth as it is development, which is not the case. The concept of growth brought us where we are now. And if we don't fight this concept, we don't have any chance. Green Deal will not help us. The global forum, there is no forum which could change this, because we are still driven, our economy, our society is driven through this basic concept, which is wrong. At the local level, people understand very well what is different between growth and development. We have seen how where this consumerism brought us. Growth means that the local stores, which were on every corner, dispersed in the area, covered all the needs. Now we have several big markets, which caused that we lost a lot of working places in the trade. So growth, in this sense, destructed the local quality of life. And if you compare it to the farming, if there is one farm growing and growing, what will happen with the other farms? They will die. People will leave the rural area and will go to the city, where they face the poverty. So, growth concept, if we don't fight this, we cannot win this battle.
Thank you very much, Goran. We are getting to the essence of this panel, and that is beyond, trying to continue the same way with the same problems. You will never find a solution. So I would like to offer to the audience to come up with questions, because we have 15 minutes left. Marian would like to talk before that. And I have a few other remarks, and then I would like to have a kind of closing round, because we are talking about the future of Europe. But I will not tell my question, which I will put to the panelists here now. I would like now to give Marion the floor. Anybody else who wants to intervene here before we open the floor to the audience? No, Marion, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Goran, for bringing this up, because this was what I wanted to bring up also. I think, but not that we need to fight growth. I think that what we need is to have a conversation of what comes beyond growth, and it is coming already now. We see the inflation, and Putin says it as well. It's not only my fault. It's not. It is our economic policy that we have been growing and growing and growing, and now we have a catalyst. And we cannot go growing all the time. We need to have a conversation now, what can happen, and I see also chances in this, the inflation, the energy crisis, because we need to stop somehow. We cannot consume the same way, and maybe this will already bring us a step closer to saving the climate and saving the biodiversity. But we need to start to talk about what sacrifices are we willing to make and what are we not willing to make.
That's a very good point. And I would like to tell you all, if you look at the program, if you take the QR, which Pablo mentioned earlier, you find a document which everybody here at the panel had the privilege to read before. You can read it after this discussion if you want. And in that document, I mentioned something which comes up as an alternative, perhaps, to the concept of degrowth. And that is something Marian was just saying. It's sufficiency. The question is, what is enough? People tend to believe that degrowth means less and less and less and not a good life anymore. It doesn't necessarily mean that. So to look at the things that we need to have a good life and not what we need to consume to keep an economy running, that is perhaps an approach in which we could look at the future of Europe. It needs a lot of declinating that down to politics, to structures, to building a resilient infrastructure. But I would like to stop talking here myself and have you in with questions or remarks, pretty short if you can. Who would like to make a contribution from the floor? We can give you a microphone.
Dzień dobry, będę mówił po polsku. Będzie mi trochę łatwiej. Postaram się krótko. Ale słuchając panelu... Nie mają słuchawek? Okay. So I will speak English because of you. Sorry. You are not well prepared. So listening to you, again, I have a confirmation that the European Union needs a serious reform of the funds, of the development policies. Really, it's time to get rural development from DG Agri. It's a time to take part of regional development fund, and there's a time to create local development policy. We need the local development policy for many reasons, to have a real decision on the ground, and also those combination which is proposed by community-led local development, it's not the really well-working solution because, again, the combination, a lot of bureaucratic requirements, it's not the solution. So my proposal is local development policy and local development fund at European level. We need local development policy of the European Union. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andre. Are there more? Norman, you prepare, but I would gather a few remarks, if there are. Yes, I cannot see it fully, so you just would you mention your name?
My name is Joanna Story. I would like to ask about the personal responsibility that you emphasised. And while I agree that there is a degree of that, what is the capacity of local people to actually do that and undertake that? If there is no development of the capacity to understand the whole situation, which is vast and, as Hans mentioned, it's complicated, you're asking a lot, I think.
Thank you. I would like to take two more.
Can I maybe answer?
Yes, Norman, you can answer first, yes.
No, thank you, because I will forget what was very important questions, by the way, both. Because I think I don't want to say anything now on the future of our instruments, because we will be launching that discussion. So in fact, I'm very happy to hear that there are new ideas. Our Commissioner, Elisa Ferreira, wants to create again the group of wise people and experts. We are working on that, and we will be launching it already later this year, and we want to have an open debate and really to get the ideas from all of you. What is the best for the future of cohesion policy? And I have to tell you that my commissioner really believes that the territorial dimension somehow has to be brought forward. That's not just urban, rural, it's also about local and addressing those territorial needs in a better way, because she doesn't believe that the new policy objective which we created is sufficient. So any ideas on that would be welcome. For me, of course, the future discussion more will be about traditional cohesion policy, which we worked in shared management. We simplify it, of course, with every period, but there are new recovery and resilience plans which work in a different mode. So in fact, the discussion for me it will be about those two types of fund management and how we will converge, or we keep both, or we change something somewhere. And this is very important discussion. What comes on on the capacity of people and local authorities getting involved, it's true. We have realized that it's a problem because people sometimes simply don't understand what it is about, and even local authorities can't help them. So indeed, for this period, we put the priority to build the capacity. So we are insisting that all our programs use their technical assistance to support beneficiaries and local authorities to fund different networks and capacity building for them. And we just also launched the community of practice for the partnership principle. We want to see concrete solutions, how managing authorities talk to people, involve NGO society, and we will be building on that community of practice, again, to see whether in future we should not somehow strengthen the whole partnership principle, which is embedded in cohesion policy. So again, concrete ideas, concrete examples, how best to do it, we will be always welcome.
I can feel a lot of compassion there, Norman, in transformation of the functioning of cohesion and regional policy. So I think Andre triggered something there with his question. I would like to have another round of questions if people wish to, or remarks or whatever at this stage, before we end this panel with a round, with a concluding round. If I cannot see, yes.
Hello.
Could we get a micro into?
Yes, I've got one. So I'm Nina Klein of Ecolise, and Ecolise is an association of community-led initiatives for climate and environment. So it's permaculture, transition network, eco-villages, ECLAY. And I'm very excited about this discussion, and I support the demand for local development policies also on EU levels. And we currently try to find 10 theses on what transformational local development policies could look like as an offer for conversation. Growth is the big white elephant, for example. What does development mean? And my big question to you, actually to the EU, is I see your role as pivotal. The EU Green Deal is my personal last hope, because it's a guiding light. But what I don't get is really, how do you want to localize the European Green Deal? The obvious touch point is LEADER and CLLD, but I would very much appreciate if we could enter in a conversation about how can we make this work and what is needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One more, perhaps? Yes? Two more, and then we do the final round.
Hello, Fiona Morrison from Scotland. I realise we're part of a nation that chose to leave the party in Europe. However, we're all here in a much bigger party. I think I would like to build on the gentleman who said, I'm going to be quite controversial here. We need a new economic paradigm. The system we have is broken, and growth is part of that. And everything being hung on GDP and a growth mentality is destroying the world around us. And I think young people know this. They have a greater literacy of capital, of natural capitalism. And there is a degrowth network around. They may not all be in this room, but they are around. And I know even from my own local authority, municipality at home, the local authority will say, how come the young people are not here in our planning meetings? They don't want to take part. No, they don't, because they are creating their own network and they are creating change because they know it is their future that is on the line. So what we heard earlier about enabling young people to take the lead and not be told by us what to do is actually the only way forward. And I think we don't have to look any further than Greta, who led a young people's movement because of the concerns about what's happening with the climate emergency. So we do need a new economic paradigm.
Thank you. One more remark.
Hello, it's Kirsten Gow here. I'm an islander and I'm with the Scottish Rural Action Delegation. I have a question to the panel, which is, given that we've heard a lot about local people leading and the importance of work on the ground, and given that the shift that we have seen in recent years in the willingness to connect people that work together digitally and online throughout COVID, is the future of policy at an EU and national level radical decentralization?
Thank you. I think we can move now. Yeah, one more. Okay, one more here, and then.
Federation for Educational Initiative, Poland, small schools in Poland. I have one question to all of you, but it is a question about your email. Would it be possible to have your email separately to ask your special question for you? Okay?
Okay. What a wonderful idea.
Excellent.
So I would say,
excellent.
Yes, wonderful idea. So we will ask everybody at the end, whether that's a good idea. But I think it's a way of communicating directly from this event. Thank you very much. Yes, we are getting to our final round, and a conclusion on the future of Europe seems to be a difficult thing because of all the different aspects we just touched upon. We haven't really made a picture in which we say, now we have a plan. Now the future of Europe will be this and that, and we will leave this and we will move there. So I want to make this final round very personal, in the sense that as time is running, not only in terms of doing something against climate change or keeping peace or whatever, of course, as people who are engaged, whether on the European level in the institutions or in a government, or like Katrina and Marion in networks and movements, we have to take priorities. We have to say what comes first now. And I have a bit the feeling that the question that is in the room on priorities is, how would you go about making things happen that need to happen on the local level so that people can really take responsibility and trust in themselves to meet the challenges that are in front of them. The worst thing that can happen is that people feel alone and lost in the challenges, lost in all the difficulties they are facing. And we know what happens when people feel lost. There are populists who are taking that advantage and then say, follow me, I know where the things go. So, to each of you, and you take the floor when you want, I won't do any kind of order here. Again, for everybody, a minute, saying, this is my priority in the next 3 years to make the future of Europe happen, in my case, with my responsibility for this and this, be it professional, be it private. You have the choice. You make now the choice for 1 minute. What is the most important thing you want to take on to reach a good picture of Europe, a positive one, in 3 years? Is that complicated enough? Okay, you have a moment to think about it, and then you take the micro whenever you want.
I have been thinking about it for a long time already, because we have been doing our local development strategies now in a process of 2 years. So professionally, we are right now putting the activity plan on how we keep involving youth in our local action group, in our decision-making process, in our local area, and giving space for their questions. We are putting also activity plan on what kind of projects will we develop in order to face climate change questions and biodiversity. So we are on a good way, I think, locally. Personally, I keep making decisions, I think, every day on how I travel, what I buy, and stuff like that. And then I think on a European level, we have started up from ELARD with a couple of projects that are kind of meant to enhance how all local action groups are active in these questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe because, well, professionally for me it's easy. I will still continue monitoring and implementation of these billions of cohesion policy programs all over Europe, and that's really a task which is responsible, but it's also professionally fulfilling, because I see the result. When I travel out, I see our programs investing, I see people, businesses benefiting, territories benefiting. It's really indeed a great place. But personally, whenever the moderator asks me that question, I give the anecdote, because my favorite series in Netflix is A Good Place. In The Good Place, people get to paradise if they make the right choices. You make the right choice, you get plus 10 points. You make bad choice, you get minus points. And there is one place where actually the lady is telling that nobody has got to paradise in the last 20 years. And the example is, if 100 years ago I bought 100 red roses to my wife, it's a good choice, right? So I got plus 100 points. If today I buy 100 red roses to my wife, unfortunately it's a bad choice. I get minus 100 points, and I don't get to paradise. Because simply the roses are produced in Africa by child labor with pesticides and so on. So I say it because sometimes personally I'm also confused. How can we make the right choice? We talk about the growth, and I read the Donut Economics, Kate Ruthworth. We have informal group in the Commission where we discuss it, by the way. But how to make those right choices? Because in the end, growth is also stimulated by the choices that we all make in our daily lives. We are consuming, and we are consuming horribly. But I think the answer there is we need to talk, to listen, and communicate better. We need to give people the right level of information so that they can make those right choices, including myself. I always buy those strange lemonades where they say beautiful bio, then you read in small letters and you throw it out because it's 0.2 bio and the rest is, you know.
Norman, the time
anyway,
is running out.
I wanted to say, answer is communication, dialogue, cooperation. Let's talk and listen to each other, and that goes both ways, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. The Commission has a good way of extending time, so you're winning time to meet the challenges. Goran.
Professionally, the next challenge which I will face is to introduce the local currency into our local action group, which will strengthen, I hope, the short supply chain and cooperation between people. And this will be a real challenge because of the local currencies are known as the urban privilege. I wonder if we can succeed to get it at the rural area. I will let you know about this at the local level. At the European level, we will try to keep fighting for the CLLD through ELARD, through PREPARE. With the European rural parliaments, we are looking already for the next European Rural Parliament gathering and so on. So this is our permanent fight, if I may say so. At the private level, maybe I would limit myself to the everyday's agenda. The real challenge would be to get the good balance between books, between job, between children, between this inner silence which we need. That would be a very big challenge.
Thank you very much, Goran. And the takeover, how is that going to be organized, Katrina?
Yes, so the future of Europe, we heard already this morning from the inspirational speakers that the youth is the future of Europe. And what I think that everything is, we also heard in the audience that there is already alternative degrowth networks made by youth organizing around, and they are not here because they are somewhere in other place doing similar things that we are doing here. Also yesterday in the World Cafe, we saw that this exaggerated individualism and unlimited growth, the time is over for youth already. And what we need to do, and what I would like to do personally as well, is to enable those young people being the agents of change at different level. And also young people, they don't have this unlimited personal capacity. That was also a question about the limits of our capacities. They need some support. And they don't need outside support, they need a dialogue, they need this intergenerational cooperation aspect. They need to learn to be inspired by elder people who have gathered already this experience previously, who have done already things on the same topics. And they need to also get out of the local level. We heard a lot about the local level, but sometimes local level, it is really important to be enabled at local level, but sometimes it can be limiting. It can limit young spirits. We need to bring them out and make and show them those existing solutions that I was mentioning before as well, to get inspired to bring those solutions back, and not through the national or local municipality level, but directly going to other initiatives, directly communicating with European level, because sometimes at national level it stops. Sometimes the good initiatives from Europe stuck somewhere and they are not adopted as quickly as it is needed. So we need a kind of a channel, direct channel, to be able to multiply those good experiences and make those young people be agents of change and give them this opportunity. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So, Pratim, Toma, who wants to take the floor first?
Thanks a lot. So, I have another 2 years in the mandate of the Vice President of the Commission. So I'll restrict your question not to 3 or 5, but to 2 years. In those 2 years, I think what we have heard also today is the importance of the focus on people and on shifting the discussion from growth to human growth, if you wish. And I think this is one of the things that the Vice President of the Commission charged with democracy and demography has to really do, is to push in all of the discussions, in all of the decisions that we make, this element of how is this going to affect people's lives, and how can we include the people in making the decisions that are going to change their lives. We can only do that together, and it is our responsibility to be pushing that discussion. Of course, we are also challenged a lot because interests are sometimes competing. There is the urban versus rural. There's also the inside EU, outside EU, accession countries. There's also industry versus households. Who do we protect first? Where do we switch off the gas first? These are the questions that we have to face in the decisions that we make, but we have to make them with a lot of compassion and while putting people first. And this is why it's so critical for us to hear your voices and to have you tell us what is it that you care about, to be proposed to have a local action strategy, to completely revamp the way we do things in the Commission. These are the things that make us better, and that's why it's important that we also share our emails. You have them all. We are all actually public, so you can find them easily, but we will also share them. And to have this direct input from you, to understand, what are the priorities. But we also have to plead for understanding, because Europe has almost 500 million people and hundreds of thousands of industries and businesses. And we have to find solutions that work for everybody. And we can only do that in an open discussion. And this is something that I will continue to do. Invite everybody to engage and share their ideas and their views with us throughout these next 2 years. Thank you.
So I will join the 2 levels because I think most of us, for us, the work is life and life is work and the work is our hobby. So that we are lucky for that. So I will take it for the levels. I am engaged as a mayor. As a small municipality, I will try to engage people in all the decisions of the municipalities, including young people. Actually, we have participatory budgeting even in the primary school. They are preparing projects and deciding. And now we have also a very nice project that it's very simple idea, so that local schools and public canteens take food from the local farmers. But it's unusual in the Czech Republic, so we are now the first pilot region, having 10 schools, but another 4 were calling in the morning that they want to join it. So in 3 years, I hope that all the schools will join this, and all the schools will take 40% of all the food they are taking from the local farmers. And I will keep explaining all the disinformation, because I think it is this most dangerous thing is that all the people, especially elderly people, believe what they read on internet because it's right, because it's written somewhere. So keep explaining unpopular steps we have to take and also the ideas we have. As a deputy minister, I will try especially to use our presidency to explain to other member states, because I don't think the local development policy and local development fund is a solution, because I think it's a will of member states in a way to acknowledge local development as a tool, and not just from European funding, but also from the national money. So to pursue that, on the example of the Czech Republic, where we are widely using CLLD, multi-fund, with not such a big bureaucracy anymore, and also ITI and other instruments like cross-border cooperation, etc., that it works, and to show on examples that they have to take it also as an example. And also that things like smart villages can work, and community-led local development is a tool how to bring legitimacy to the people and to bring the European Union to the living rooms of people. And finally, as university teacher, I will try to persuade every year 20 students how sexy it is to live in rural areas, and that they should, after studies in Prague, just move back to rural areas and work there, because we need young people in the rural areas, and it's not going to zoo. It's an amazing challenge to come back to rural areas. So this is my personal obligation.
Thank you very much, Radim. I would like to thank you all for this exciting round of this panel. Pavel is waiting to explain the next steps, which is, of course, lunch, and then, is that right? Lunch is next? No. Yes, it is. And then a long afternoon of workshops. I think there were quite a lot of points already raised now, also yesterday. I think that even if we see enormous challenges in front of us, my feeling is that everybody is aware that we have not much time and that we have to give our utmost to make future for Europe. And that is to happen now. I think our book, I would do a little promotion for it. Rural Europe takes action, no more business as usual is the point. No more business as usual possible. We have to change a lot. That comes up from you, that comes up in this panel, and I hand over to Pavel now.
Hannes, thank you very much. This feeling that we have very little time is something that's going to stay with us all day today, and I'm going to be one of those horrible people who chases you around this whole complex. Before I get to some important housekeeping announcements, however, I would like to welcome Ms. Eva Lindström, who has joined us for just a few hours, but it is a great pleasure and a great honor for the European Rural Parliament to have you here. If you ask citizens to name a few European institutions, they'll talk about the Commission, they might mention the Parliament, they'll talk about the Council, though they'll never know which one. They're not going to mention the European Court of Auditors. And unless you are a high-level bureaucrat, you won't know. Then this feeling of terror and fear enters you as a visit from the European Court of Auditors is announced. But like any supreme audit authority, these are highly intelligent people who have an overall view of what is happening, who are not involved in implementing things, they're not engaged and don't have a set view of things, and therefore are able to come not only with criticism, but also with advice of how to act responsibly. Because we had earlier this mention of responsibility. This is what European courts of auditors and supreme audit authorities in all the member states and beyond them are all about. Eva Lindström, welcome. Housekeeping messages. If you want to leave this there, you can. Housekeeping messages, yes, there will be lunch next. After lunch, it's going to be very busy. And we're going to engage in a game of workshop conga. Now, I don't like party games, but because there are almost 20 workshop rooms scattered around this complex, and because we want you to get there on time, we need you to finish eating lunch at around 1:30. That'll give you an hour. It won't take you that long to get your lunch because we have arranged for 4 stations where you can pick up your food. And then we will ask you to please look on the back of your tag. The first W, the number there, is the number of the workshop we will be calling out. They will not be called out in order of numerical order. They will be called out by the distance you have to cover to get to your workshop room. So the ones who are called out first, get yourselves ready for a trek. because we'll need to get you there. There will be 2 rounds of workshops. That will be followed by several events. One is the Conversation Cafe, the other is the Polish Rural Forum, Forum Aktywizacji Obszarów Wiejskich, will have a meeting here just after 5, and there will of course be the stands and the message wall and the possibility to network in Hall F. But what matters now is that you get out of this room, out of this building, outside where there is sunshine, there is oxygen. There isn't much oxygen left here, I can tell you. And move over to Hall F. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you all very much.